Hello and welcome to Retech, and today we're going to talk about the Commodore Amiga, and this is the history of the Amiga, but we're going to start it in a very unusual way. It's going to be a multiple part series, but the first episode, or this episode, is going to be looking at the Amiga from a very different perspective. Now, most people will start off with how the Amiga was created and who did it and where it came from and where it went and what happened to the Amiga after Commodore folded. But this is not the route I'm going to go down. So basically we're going to start off with the Amiga as a failure. Now it sounds quite strange, doesn't it? But the Commodore Amiga was never a big hit in North America. In North America, this machine barely scratched the surface. I mean, it sold less than 700,000 units. Some kind of put it down to about 600,000 units, and you've kind of got to wonder why. And I've been looking into this, and what I found is it was down to the way the machine was originally marketed. Now, the original Amiga, the A1000 or the Amiga 1000, was brought out in 1985, and it was quite a pricey unit. You're looking at $1,200 for the base unit. The base unit didn't have everything. In some areas the base unit didn't even come with a monitor, so you're looking at £1,200 for the unit on its own, and that put it more expensive than a lot of PCs, and it put it more expensive than a lot of PCs in the UK and Europe, because remember, the PCs at the time were getting a dominant foothold. And at the time, around about 1985, you could get a PC, a clone PC, by one of the various clone manufacturers in Europe and the UK for around about £700, which is kind of under what the original asking price for this original Amiga was, which is the A1000 or the Amiga 1000. Now, this is not the Amiga 1000, this is the 500. This is the most popular machine in the Amiga lineup, and we have to wonder why, because this should have been a huge success in the United States, but it wasn't. It was an also-ran. It was a barely looked into machine. It wasn't used in schools, it wasn't used in commercial use very much, it wasn't a general home use machine. It was seen as a toy. Now, marketing firms in the US and Commodore at the time placed the Amiga or the Commodore range of computers through toy retailers. Now, they wanted to change that for the Amiga and go down the specialist route, but by this time Commodore had burnt its bridges literally with most of its potential suppliers and most of its retailers. See, originally Commodore didn't really go down the route of specialist shops and specialist outlets selling computers. They really just wanted to get them out to everybody, and that's the way they ran with the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64. Now, the Amiga was much more powerful, much more capable, but it still had the reputation of possibly a toy-like machine in the United States, and that's really what prevented this machine from selling more. Plus, you could actually get a PC at around about the same price or cheaper than the original Amiga, and even when the 500 came out, you could still get a basic PC for around about the same cost, especially in the US and in most parts of Europe. So that really didn't help sales. But the biggest shocker of all was the way these machines were marketed. So let's take a look at a shocker of an advert that Commodore was putting out in the United States.
Aren't you astronauts?
Yes, ma'am. We like to compare notes with Stevie on the new space station.
Hi, we're the Pointer Sisters. We need Stevie's help with our new album.
The Amiga computer. What can it do? Well, what do you want it to do?
I need some more help.
Mr. O'Neill! Upstairs first door on the left.
Amiga from Commodore, the computer for the creative mind.
Reading that advert, it doesn't say a lot. It is really dull. I mean, it's kind of something that your parents would probably say to you to get something, to get your homework done, or you might want to say as a child to your parents, I need this because it will help me do my homework, or help me run the household finances, or help me educate myself. But that really doesn't sell. It really doesn't sell these machines. In the UK, we had a managing director called David Pleasance, and this is what he had to say about the Amiga at the time.
I said, like it was yesterday, honestly. I said, look, Steve, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. You've got no effing opportunity to make an effing deal with me. I said, look, hear me out. I said, I've had this idea, what I want to do, that I believe will bring us more business than you've ever seen in your life before. Or, if it doesn't work, I'll give you cause to get rid of me.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? And I said, what's that over there? It was 500 on his desk, on a desk. He said, that's an effing computer. I said, no, it's not. I said, it's a piece of plastic with some keys on it. I said, have you got any idea how difficult it is to market that inanimate piece of plastic with some keys on it?
Yeah.
I said, we're doing it all wrong. I said, from now on, we don't sell computers, we sell dreams. And I want to put these packs together that show in full colour what this is going to deliver for you, how it's going to change your life.
Yeah.
So you've actually got something to market it. And that's when the idea for the Batman pack came from, right? And anyway, he had the guts to go with it. He had nothing to lose, really. And so I sat with my team and I said, right, boys and girls, I want to do this pack. Now, what is going to be the best, most wanted piece of software coming out for the winter season? Yeah. And everybody more or less agreed that they knew that because the movie was coming out, Batman the movie was coming out, and they said, oh, that's going to be huge because it's going to be on television, on cinema or anything else. And that was produced by Ocean.
Yeah, the Batman pack was massive. It was huge.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
It was one of the biggest things ever, to be honest. It's the one my kid plays.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, do you still want me to talk about this? Because this is more about Commodore. Do you want me to talk about other things?
It's about you and how you did it in Commodore. It's because, I mean, at the end of the day, people know about Commodore. They don't really know about what you did in that respect, because, there's all the magazine articles out there.
Well, at least so they're getting the truth.
So there was a very, very different attitude, and the 500 was well placed to become a dominant force in this sector of the marketplace. And the way he advertised these machines, as he explained, was very similar to this advert.
The Commodore Amiga 500 now comes with the exciting Batman package, or Class of the 90s, the fun way to learn. Is he doing his homework or playing the Joker? If you imagined having a home computer would be glum, you'll be glad to see the Commodore Amiga 500, which does arcade quality games. You can compose a symphony, or you can plan a new garden. The Amiga 500 could make all the difference to a child's education. So don't imagine having a home computer would be glum, because happily you can buy a Commodore Amiga 500. For details, call 01873 9800. You'll be glad you did.
Now, as you can see from this advert, that it was a very different way of marketing this machine. It was marketed as a dream, as fun, as an aspiration. It wasn't marketed as a tool for torture like it was in the States, because most school kids would have thought that it was a bit of a torturous thing to do, get a machine to learn on, to educate yourself.
I am the Commodore Amiga 500, the ultimate home office computer designed for maximum ease of use. I can do virtually anything you would use an IBM compatible for, only more. Even your most routine tasks become faster, easier, more enjoyable with my brilliant color, advanced graphics, and point-and-click mouse control. I turn word processing into idea processing. I provide true freedom of thought and expression. I help you say what you want to say, the way you want to say it, in words or pictures or both. I run powerful word processing programs like WordPerfect, currently the world's best-selling word processing software.
And that's not the route that Commodore UK went down. And it was the same for Europe, predominantly Germany, France, and even as far afield as Australia, the sentiment was very much the same. This is an Australian advert at the time.
I'm learning fast. I'll give it my best shot. I knew I could do it.
My name's Collie, and guess what? Suck as a man is such a shower. She just blabs about his band she's met. What an idiot. So guess what? I made this picture of me with the band. Amanda will spit blood badly when she sees this fair income. Then I'm gonna put myself in their video. So easy, because guess what? My Commodore Amiga is so excellent, and Amanda's such a bogan because she won't know how I did it. So good. See ya.
That's not to say that the advertisements in the United States for the Amiga line were bad. It was just that the advert itself was a bit of a rip-off from Apple's advert only a few years earlier for the Macintosh. Now, this advert, which I'm just going to show you now, is a really good, technically well shot, very well produced, very gritty, very gripping advert. But it has its flaws.
Experience the mind unbounded. Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
And as you can see, its flaws are it doesn't actually say much about the machine. I mean, really, where in that advert was the Amiga? Where in that advert was its capabilities, what it could do? Where were the things that could make your life better if you bought one of these, and so on? And that was completely missing. And it was missing from that advert totally. Now, it is one of my favourite adverts from the era, but not because it sold the machine, but because of what it was because of the story and the actual visual appearance of the advert more than anything else. It doesn't sell machines though. Apple found that out really with their previous advert on the same lines. It doesn't sell computers. I mean, if we look at the volume of sales alone and to which areas that the Amiga sold in, you will see that the United States and North America barely figures. You know, at the time, I believe the population was around about the 230 million people. And the population of the UK was around about the sort of early 60 million. Wasn't far off the population from France and Germany. They were roughly in line with each other when you compare it to America. Now, to have sales of 600, depending on which source you look at, 1,000 units, so 600,000 units to 700,000 units for a country the size of the United States of America with its massive population, is a bit of a kick in the teeth for Commodore. Commodore, a US primarily company, and very few sales. Nobody took it up, nobody bothered with it, nobody wanted it. It was used really for video editing, some graphics work and its sound capabilities, but that was it. Now you look at the sales side of it for the UK. The UK was its biggest market, its biggest successful area, and that was over 1.5 million units, which isn't bad. That's the entire Amiga range, not just this 500 or the Plus. It was the full range of Commodore Amiga machines, and 1.5 million units isn't bad. But you consider a very similar time span for Sinclair's units in years, you'll find that Sinclair's units pulled out 5 million. That's a massive difference. You will also find that the next biggest market was Germany. Now, Germany wasn't far behind the UK. It's, 1.4 million-ish, which made the Amiga a German and UK, or a UK and German machine primarily. And this is really its fundamental marketplace. The others were still in European countries apart from the Australian market, and the bulk of the Amiga sales were European sales. They weren't American, they weren't North America. 250,000 plus in France. And then you have to add in all of the other territories, which made roughly about 4.5 to 5 million overall sales for the Commodore Amiga range of computers and consoles. The Amiga wasn't the biggest sales success for America. The Amiga was almost a British, German or European model, really. It was a British, German or European consumer-led product. Now, why was that? Well, apart from the feeble advertising, Commodore in the US, Commodore International, Commodore Business Machines were failing. They were in a mess. They were bleeding money. They had no direction. They were rudderless, and it showed in the way they couldn't get a groundbreaking machine at the time like the Amiga into the consciousness of the American people. It also didn't help that the PC, the personal computer and all of its clones, the IBM PC and its clones, were eating up the market share of just about every desktop format as well. Very few machines were able to compete with the IBM PC and its clones throughout the life of the Amiga. It was always going to be that way, which is the same that Apple found in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, all the way through until it started doing stylized products. It found its footing, it found its niche. Graphics, sound, multimedia were the Amiga's effective niche. It was squandered. It was squandered until the likes of David Pleasance got hold of this machine and was tasked to increase sales, improve marketing, and to get these machines out into the wild. There were two very different mindsets. Remember, at the end of Commodore as in the United States side of Commodore, went bankrupt. Commodore UK stayed afloat and were technically viable companies. But unfortunately that didn't happen. So this is a very short form story about the history of the Commodore Amiga. It's the first part, and it's there to lay the groundwork for the rest of the history of this venerable and fairly distinguished machine. I know I'm going to get people from the other side of the pond saying, no, you're wrong, the Amiga was an American machine. It was taken to the hearts of a lot of Americans, which it was, but it just wasn't successful. It wasn't a sales success. It wasn't a success through its marketing, and it really didn't compete in the computer, desktop and home computer market in the United States. Remember, they had a crash not long before the Amiga was launched, and it was a massive video game home computing crash. And it was very different in the UK and Europe and even Australia. It was very, very different. They didn't have their crash until a few years later. And that crash wasn't as hard hitting as it was in America. It was oversupply in the UK, and it was oversupply in parts of Europe. It wasn't down to no potential buyers for desktop style machines or all-in-one form factors or home computers or whatever you might want to call them at the time. Really, when we look at it in cold figures, the Amiga was a European machine. It was predominantly European, and some could argue that was the same for its main rival, which was Jack Trammell's other machine, which was the Atari ST. But that's a slightly different story for another day. So I hope you enjoyed this quick look into why the Amiga failed. Well, not so much in Europe, but it did in the US, and ultimately the Commodore line failed as a whole. But I hope you'll stick with us with the history of who made these machines, where those people came from, and what they're doing now. And then if you really want any more confirmation of the history of this model within the UK and Europe and why it was so successful, just go back through my David Pleasance videos, the life and times of David Pleasance, and he outlines it beautifully, everything that you really want to know about what happened at Commodore at the time, how it was almost saved, and how the Amiga line became so successful. Okay, so thanks for watching. I hope you subscribe. Remember, we are on Patreon if you feel the need to do so, and I look forward to seeing you again in my next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.